You are now listening to the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Welcome to They Live by Film, a platform dedicated to bringing you film discussion and interviews from around the world. I am Adam Lundy. I am joined as always by my co-hosts Chris Haskell, the returning Zach Bryant, as well as friend of the podcast Krit from Krit Pick Productions. I always get that wrong, Krit. I'm sorry. Hello, everyone.
Hey,
Hello,
I'm not
hello.
re-recording that, by the way. I'm doing it fucking live. We do it live here on They Live by Film. I'm not re-recording that. So, hello everyone, hello listeners, and hello friends.
hey everyone.
How's it going? How's it going?
Good to have you back, Zach.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I hate that I missed the first episode to get my hot takes on for Evil Dead, the first
And
three. So at
you
least I came
missed,
for this one.
you missed the one with the good movies. That's a
No,
shame.
no, no. I showed up. Don't worry, I'm here.
Zach, we have time this episode for you to go back and revisit your opinions on the first three. And
Oh
Kurt, I hope
yeah,
you
let's
as
totally do
well.
that. Give us like a quick rundown on your thoughts on the first three Evil Dead movies. We have time.
Okay. The first one is awesome. It's and for a long time, the first one was my favorite of the trilogy. That's kind of changed over the last few years, but that movie's still fantastic. The third one is probably now my favorite. I love that one. I think commits more to being a comedy because my biggest issue with Evil Dead 2, even though I like it, is people call it like a perfect balance for a comedy, and I disagree with that. I don't actually think it's all that balanced. It kind of goes back and forth on it without really being as consistent as I feel like a lot of people say it is. It's still really good. I still think it's great, but it's my least favorite of those three. So I guess that sums it up pretty well.
See, this is the enigma of recording with you week after week, Zach. I agree with you so exactly on what you just said, and I feel like we're going to spend an hour and a half today disagreeing. How, I've never quite understood how we overlap so much on on some things and are so off on others. Because I totally agree with exactly what you just said.
I think it's because on older stuff we agree, but where you always have a negative bent towards recent stuff, that's where we disagree.
Oh yeah, that's fair. All right, fine. You nailed it. That I think is exactly what it is. Kurt, what about you? Have you ever seen the first three Evil Dead movies with your
Have I
posters
ever
in the
seen the
background?
first three Evil Dead
Why did you think we invited him on first time?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding because he has like so it's like every poster and collectible. He's like,
movies? Yeah,
Did they,
Sam Raimi's my favorite filmmaker, so and a lot of that comes from Evil Dead.
yeah,
And the first film I always liked, but I didn't love. I always just more so appreciated it for what it was, because because it is still just kind of a low budget horror movie made by a couple of really young filmmakers and their friends, and so I never thought like it was incredible. However, when I rewatched it because I was going to be on the first part of this, I rewatched it and I thought it was fantastic, and I really really enjoyed it that time.
yes.
Evil Dead 2 is in my top 100. I love Evil Dead 2. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. The visual effects work I don't think gets any better than that movie. I
Mhm.
think that is very much the peak of the practical effects and stuff like that. Though they're not as grand as they would be in Army of Darkness and stuff like that. I think the specific designs and the variety, and it's got my favorite Ash as well out of all of them. He seems a lot less I don't want to say like a caricature, like he is an Army of Darkness, but he's like kind of cool in Army of Darkness, where he's not that cool in Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
You see that bridge from where he's still just kind of an idiot to kind of the coolness in the third act.
Yeah.
I love the whole designs. I love how quaint it is. It's a beautiful movie. It's great. And then Army of Darkness is, well, it's Army of Darkness. It's fucking sick. It's just fantasy. It's horror. That should happen way more often. It's Raimi with like an actual big budget where he gets to do whatever he wants in this kind of toolbox, and he's really good. He's really good with big budgets, and it's a shame like a lot of horror directors don't get that kind of license to play with a vision that grand, because this is what happens when they get to.
Yeah.
It's great. It's slapstick. It's funny. It's scary. Bruce Campbell is probably the most handsome man that ever lived in this movie. It's got a great poster, great trilogy. It's all perfect.
Can I just note the only like negative part of Army of Darkness is its title? Like it not being Medieval Dead is just kind of
Oh
a missed
my
opportunity.
god,
It
that annoys me so
should be
much.
it should be Medieval Dead.
It's okay.
And we can all confirm that the S Smart ending is awful, correct? We're all on the
Uh,
same page here.
Wrong,
okay, okay. I will
wrong.
go for mine. I prefer the S Mart ending
Me
just because
too.
I think it's more
No,
fun. However, I'm going to give a lot of props because I think people are too hard on the what is that? Is that the European ending?
we call it that. Yeah, the European ending.
Yeah, the European ending is way better set up and it makes more sense. Like as far as like the movie goes, it's just much more of a downer ending. But like they do that joke twice, and that's supposed to be you have the setup, the callback, and then you're supposed to have your finish. And they never really get there because they don't redo the joke the last time. But that SMR ending is really iconic, so I really can't knock it too much.
No, I love the S Smart ending so much. It's great. It's got the one-liners. It's shot really beautifully. I really like it. I can't believe you don't.
Chris, I'm glad it was just me and you last time.
Yeah, that was the official position of They Live by Film.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. S Smart ending sucks. European ending, go. Right, let's move on. I don't want to argue about this. Obviously, before we get into what we're going to talk about today, we'll do some any other business. I've been off work this week, um, and I've probably watched more films in a week than I've ever watched in a week in my life. I've watched 15 films this week, which included two four-film days, which is, yeah, it's probably the most I've watched in a single week in a long time anyway. Um, Most of that is made up from me rewatching most of the Halloween franchise. So I watched from Halloween 2 onwards. 'Cause I'm saving the original for Halloween. So I watched Halloween 2 onwards, skipping the Rob Zombie ones because, and it's not because I'm like a Rob Zombie hater or whatever. I just I don't find them fun, whereas I find the rest of the series fun, and I just wanted to have some fun this week. I didn't. Rob Zombie, you have to be in a specific mood for him, or at least I would. I find him too depressing. Just like visually and stuff, it's just all very grimy and downer. I just wasn't in the mood for Rob Zombie ones. Um,
I mean, Michael escapes, the sanitarium because these dudes decide to rape a girl. So, I mean, I understand how they're not very fun.
yeah, so it's just yeah, it just wasn't for me this week. But I'm gonna give my brief thoughts on every Halloween film other than those ones that I mentioned. I'm gonna keep them brief because I don't want to be fighting with Zach all episode. Um,
It's just going to be a Halloween episode.
yeah, well, if one could hope. Right, Halloween 2, overrated. I hate
No
Michael
problems
in
there.
this because they just turned him into a Terminator. He's not the shape. I don't like what they did with Michael at all in this film, and it drags for a good considerable part of the film. So Halloween 2 is overrated. Halloween 3 is underrated. It is the second best film of the franchise. If it
We're on pace
wasn't
so far.
if it wasn't called Halloween 3, if it was just called Season of the Witch, this would be like an all-timer sci-fi fantasy horror film. Everyone would love it. It would be on everyone's list of like, up there with like, Alien and The Thing and stuff. I think it's amazing. It's just such a good film. Uh Halloween 4, Return of Michael Myers. I love this film. I've always loved it. It's my third favorite of the franchise. And it's mainly because they made Michael the shape again. Michael's depiction in this film is as close to the original as I think nearly any of the other films got after this. It's a real pity about the mask. That's the only thing that really brings it down is the mask is so bad. But Michael as a character is really great, and the supporting cast, the new cast of like Jamie Lloyd and Rachel and stuff, they're all really good. Loomis is good in it as well. Like I just love this film. Halloween 4: Return of Michael Myers is one of my favorites of the franchise. Halloween 5: Revenge of Michael Myers. For a long time, I didn't like this, but I had a bit of fun with it this time. Again, I think the depiction of Michael in this is actually pretty good because it does something that all the other films forget. In the original Halloween, Michael Myers is not just like a stalker killer. He's a bit of a freak. He's a bit of a weirdo. Like he gets up to weird shit, like digging up graves and setting up traps, and like that's like people forget about that part, and a lot of later films don't really lean into that. Where at least in Halloween 5, he does that. He digs up the coffin for Jamie and puts bodies around the attic in the Myers house and stuff. So the depiction of Michael in this is actually pretty close to the original because it remembers that Michael's a bit of a bit of a weirdo. Um, I know the criticisms around the film, but I had fun with it. I've seen a lot of shit Giallo movies in the past couple of weeks, so like I was completely okay with the nonsense that happens in this film. If people can forgive Giallo movies, and people can forgive Revenge of Michael Myers.
I will
Um,
say real quick, because I think you'll agree with me on this. As much as I
mhm.
don't like Halloween 5, that car chase in the woods is a peak scene and like that the whole trilogy.
Yeah, it's
Like,
really
yeah,
good.
it's so good. It's really well done.
There's a lot of stuff in it that I really like. A lot of the kills are very good. The one with the scythe is great as well in the barn.
Mhm.
There's a lot of really good. I think there's a lot of good stuff in Revenge of Michael Myers. I even like the kooky kind of psychic connection between Jamie and Michael. I'm into that. I completely vibed at this film this time. Um, it's not like my in my top five or whatever of the franchise, but I enjoyed it a lot more than I remember enjoying it previously. Um, I watched The Curse of Michael Myers. I just watched the regular cut. I didn't watch the producer's cut, which I think is a little bit better. Curse of Michael Myers, unfortunately, I just don't think it's a very good film. I don't really engage with any of the new characters, especially Paul Rudd's character, who I find really bland. I can't really call him a new character. He's playing Tommy Doyle, but a new depiction, I guess. Um, a lot of creative decisions and choices I just don't really vibe with. It's just, yeah, Curse of Michael Myers not for me. I know it does have its fans, but it's yeah, I'm not one of them. Unfortunately, it's just not for me. Halloween H2O, I vibe with H2O because it's just a Scream movie, but with Michael Myers. So of course I like it. It scratches that, post Scream teen slasher itch in my brain. So I enjoy H2O. And again, I know a lot of people maybe don't like it that much because it comes, takes it out of Haddonfield and stuff, but I like H2O. Resurrection is an abomination. Terrible movie. The only it has two saving graces. One is that it is very funny. I know it's unintentional, but it is a very funny movie. You just kind of have to laugh at most of it. And the mask in some scenes is actually quite good, especially compared to the last few entries. Um, when it's in full light, it doesn't look great, but there is a lot of scenes where the mask actually looks pretty good. Um, so yeah, Resurrection is definitely the worst of the franchise, though, by um a significant margin, I would say. Halloween 2018. I've loved this film since it came out. I've seen it like five times. I really love it. I know a lot of people don't like this, just kind of like a retread, and its references are very kind of on the nose, but I love it a lot. Halloween Kills is one of those films I kind of like more and more every time I watch it. I didn't like it when it first came out, and then I'm started liking it more and more. I'm just kind of accepting it as it is, which is just a kill fest. And the kills are great. Evil Die Tonight stuff is still so cringy. If you cut that out of the film, then I think I maybe enjoy it a little bit more because it kind of stops it a little bit dead. But yeah, Halloween Kills is a fun time. It may not be a great film, but it's a fun time. And Halloween Ends is such a complicated film because I'm not one of these Ends haters. Like I'm not one of these guys who like there's no Michael Myers or well, there's very little Michael Myers. I hate Halloween Ends, blah blah blah. I hate Corey, blah blah blah. I'm not one of these people. Halloween Ends frustrates me because I can see the potential in it. Like when I watch like there is a good film in there. I just feel like there was too many ideas at the writers' table that they have tried to push at the same time. and they weren't brave enough in the choices. Like for me, and this is just my opinion, I think Halloween Ends would be a better movie if Michael wasn't in it at all. I think they should have committed to that
I
and just
actually agree with
had,
you. As much as I like Halloween Ends, I completely agree with you,
yeah,
100%.
like they should have just committed to Corey. Like even if they wanted to keep it ambiguous, where we don't see that transition scene where where Corey starts to learn from Michael or whatever. If anything, they should keep it ambiguous, and maybe Laurie thinks Michael's come back, or the town thinks Michael comes back, but Laurie's suspicious of Corey, and then they can kind of go down that road. But yeah, they just try and push so many different ideas that it just ends up. It's a bit of a bloated mess. It's nearly 2 hours long, which is much too long for any slasher film, in my opinion. So it just becomes bloated, it becomes messy, and it's really frustrating to watch because I think it's I like the characters are good. Corey's good, the actors playing him is good, all the supporting cast are good. The film looks great. It's well directed. It's a well made film from a technical level. I think it just the writing lets it down. And I think if they were braver in the writer's room, this could have been a really good film. So it's just more frustrating watching it rather than like hating it or whatever. But yeah, that's Halloween. I did watch some other stuff. I watched Alien Romulus, which I thought was okay, and then some Radiant stuff. But yeah.
Adam, I actually will say we agree on a lot more than you thought we would. Like, I think everything up to four we're pretty much identical on,
That's nice.
and I feel like I successfully wore you down on kills, so I'll take it. I will take that one.
Without any commentary, my top five are original Halloween, then H2O at 2, Halloween 3 at 3, Resurrection at 4, and then 2018
Wait,
at
wait,
5.
wait, wait, wait,
What
wait,
the
wait,
fuck?
wait, 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 wait.
You
You
can't say
can't.
no comment and then put resurrection at
Please
four.
elaborate. Please elaborate.
Why?
You have
It's
you have to be trolling. I refuse to believe that that's a top five Halloween movie for you.
Like you could sit
That's
there
an
and say Buster Rhymes
abomination.
is cool, but like I don't even think the biggest Buster Rhymes fan in the world would put Resurrection at four. Like,
It's true. I really love Buster Rhymes. I put it at 6. So.
Even that's insane. But like, I'm not even like speaking as a Halloween fan. Like, this is just like a bad film.
H2O?
No, not H2O. Resurrection.
that's
Oh,
LL
oh,
Cool J.
oh, you're talking about
They don't
Resurrection.
look the same, Chris.
Wow, Chris. Wow.
What? Oh, shut up.
Wow.
I thought you were talking about why H2O at number 2. Okay, Resurrection at number 4. What do you? I mean, it's just a funny movie. It made me laugh a lot.
It did, but it wasn't intentional, Chris. It's not a comedy.
That's okay. I
Okay.
enjoyed it. I had a good time. Halloween is like, I mean, as I was rewatching these, there's a lot of bad movies in that franchise. Like 4 and 5 are okay, but they're not like good movies. And then
Four is actually a really
Four
good
is a
movie. I don't
good
know what the
movie.
fuck you're talking about.
eh,
Yeah.
Four is good.
it's okay. And obviously we disagree on Halloween Ends, which is fine. We don't need to retread that. And The Curse of Michael Myers, I think we all agree is dog shit. I have it at
No,
one.
I just see Chris wasn't even listening. I said I was one of those fans who liked Curse of Michael Myers.
No, you don't. You just haven't.
Yes, I do.
All
It's
right,
it's
fine.
fun. It's got actually got like a really cool like autumn atmosphere to it. But you know what? We're going to end up talking about Halloween more than Evil Dead at this rate. So.
Well, this episode drops like a day before Halloween or something. I don't know. So it's appropriate. But yeah, Halloween Resurrection is fun.
Who wants to go next? What's everyone else been watching?
I will go real quick because I can pull mine up. I'm not going to name all 20 since I wasn't here last night. I'm not going to name all 26 movies I have seen this month that are horror. So I'm just going to hit some highlights. The Witch is still awesome. Rewatched it. Sharkers is this weird movie on Tubi. Nobody has seen it. Please go watch it. I described it as like, who's that guy who made Spring Breakers? Harmony Korine? Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like if he made it on $100 budget, left on a coke vendor, and then Refn had to come in and finish it, and they only had like $20 to make it.
That sounds like
Whoa,
Chris's
sold.
perfect movie.
It's a fucking weird. Yeah, it's on Tubi for free. Go watch it. It's a wild movie. Let's see. I watched You're Next, which is always fantastic. We'll plug. I'm sure there's an episode we could plug in for that. When did that last? Was it last October?
It was around
No.
this
When did
time
we do
last year.
You're Next?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
around
So
this
go
time
back like a
last year.
year. Yeah, and you'll find our episode on You're Next and Kill List.
That's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah. I watched the new Hellboy, the Crooked Man. I can say it's better than the 2018 one or 2019, whatever year that fucking movie came out.
This is how I
Which is
learned that there's a new Hellboy movie.
yeah, it's like a low budget horror Hellboy where it takes place in like Appalachia. I mean, it's cheap looking, but honestly, I mean, I actually think the guy who plays Hellboy does a pretty good job. It almost feels like you know what? I'm going to go ahead and like set up your serve here, Adam. It feels like a CW pilot for an episode.
Not sold.
So you can save that for later. You can save it for later. Um, I saw Terrifier 3, which I know has been getting a lot of buzz, and I feel I'm so conflicted on Terrifier 3 because like I feel like I'm the wet blanket this time where I felt like everyone else was during the Halloween trilogy that we're getting like these major slasher movies that have a lot of violence, they're a lot of fun, and I'm the one who likes them, everyone else hates them. I feel the opposite here. I like Terrifier 2 for what it is because it's like Nightbreed. It's got like this weird slasher fantasy thing going on. And I think that's kind of cool. And I gave it a 7. I think it's solid. I like the final girl on that. Terrifier 1 is dog shit. It is not a movie. It is not like this isn't me being pretentious. It is a tech demo for special effects. That is all it is. And it's like, oh look, there's a guy who is a clown that does these things. That's all it is. There's no plot, there's no nothing. There are shittier slasher movies with better plot. Terrifier 3 is kind of in between those, like where it takes some of the good from 2, but a lot of the bad from 1, and it doesn't really work. And I think it's because they really want to do this like fantasy thing, but Art the Clown doesn't fit. And I understand he's kind of the icon of the series, but he doesn't fit in it. It's kind of the opposite problem of Nightbreed, where the slasher villain's the coolest part and the fantasy stuff just feels half baked. It's weird. It's a strange movie. It was also strange that it came out in Halloween when it's very much a Christmas movie. They could have at least waited until like November to do it because it feels kind of awkward going to the theater and seeing him do like Blood Angels, which sounds cooler than it is. But yeah, it's just I don't know. I feel weird about the Terrifier movies. I wish I liked them more because I want to, and I keep paying to go see them.
It's making a lot of money, right? It's doing well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for it. Like, I want, I think slashers are making like somewhat of a comeback. I mean, we've seen how much Scream movies have made. We've seen how much Halloween movies make, and they're major IPs. So, we give them kind of of course, they made a lot of money, even though I think there's disagreement there. I think people are just more interested than they used to be. And Terrifier was started out as a very indie slasher movie that's just continued to grow through each movie, which is cool to see. I wish I liked them more. So let's see. I rewatched the TV series The Fall of the House of Usher. Awesome. I watched Psycho 3 for the first time, which I saw it when I was a kid. I don't remember it. So I'm going to say I saw Psycho 3 for the first time. Not as good as 2, not as good as 1, but still really good. And it's kind of sad because Anthony Perkins didn't direct much because he thought he couldn't do it. If you watch this movie, it's very obvious how good of a director he would have been. Like he's very fluid with the camera. Like it's very dynamic through how he uses it. It's very fun to watch just to see how he does it. And honestly, it does a good job of like continuing that progression that I think Psycho 2 does so well, where it's developing Norman Bates as this very sympathetic villain. Which they kind of hit on in 1, but they actually expand on it better in 2 and 3. So yeah, I like that one. Rewatched Donnie Darko, which I was kind of afraid to rewatch because it was kind of like when I watched Boondock Saints earlier this year. I was like, man, I haven't seen some of these since I was a teenager, and I'm kind of afraid to watch them now because I have good memories. Good thing for me, I had a good taste as a teenager, so we're good to go. Most of those movies are cool.
Donnie Darko rips.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I did not watch the fucking director's cut. I watched it. I was showing my girlfriend. She'd never seen it. She had never seen Donnie Darko.
That's
So I was showing
exactly
it to
the
her.
situation I had last year because Neve had never
What?
seen it, and then we were watching
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I was like, let's sit down and watch it because I told her who was in it. She's like, oh, okay. She's like, I like all those people, and I think the part that cracked her up the most was the part where Jake Gyllenhaal is talking to Patrick Swayze, and he says, "I think you're the Antichrist."
Yeah,
I,
it's good.
part's
I
awesome.
think you're the fucking Antichrist.
And then I rewatched Doctor Sleep. It's solidified. That movie's better than The Shining. It just is. Fucking Doctor Sleep's awesome. Um, I saw Rumors in theaters this weekend. Um, it was so we watched Guy Madden. So I know Chris and Adam, you guys have watched Guy Madden because we watched that. What was it, Forbidden Door, right?
Unfortunately, yeah. Forbidden
Yeah.
Room, I
So
think.
yes, that's what it is. And we this one actually makes sense. So, I would say actually watch this one. I had a lot of fun. I didn't understand half the jokes because they're definitely hitting like the current political climate jokes that I don't understand, but they were still funny. Like they were still successful in making me laugh, even if I didn't quite get them. So pretty well written. It's done really well. It's really absurd. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a whole lot more than the Forbidden Room, wherever the fuck it was. I watched Exorcist: The Beginning, which is dog shit. So I know no one is shocked about that news. It's really really bad. But it is fun to kind of see there's like a Taken 3 kind of edit in it where it's obvious that when Ronnie Harlan took over the movie from Paul Schrader, that he still used some of Paul Schrader's stuff but edited it with his own, and it's really awkwardly edited at times, and it's really funny. So there's that. It's also really fun to play the game of which scenes did Paul Schrader shoot because it's really obvious. So watch it for that reason. I've never seen a movie that has so much cool iconography, but it's so fucking boring. And then in theaters yesterday, I saw Smile 2. Parker Finn, I'm really starting to like as a director. I think he's, as far as like studio horror guys goes, I think he is going to be like really somebody to watch out for in the next few years because he's very talented with camera. He, while I think his movies are too long, Adam, you would bitch like completely about his movies being nearly 2 hours long, and for
That's
what they are.
the exact reason why I haven't watched Smile.
I will say they're well written. Like he puts a lot of thoughtfulness into it, but I do think he could be a little bit more efficient in the edit. Because I think the problem with both of them is they hit kind of the same point a few times where you could cut out one of those two, and I feel like it comes down to this is a really cool set piece, so I don't want to cut it. But I think I'm hoping as you get like more into directing, you get better at that. Like you learn to make those sacrifices for the sake of the pacing. But beyond that, I think he makes really effective scares. Like I think he's really good for a mainstream audience where he can do these jump scares, but they're well made. It's kind of like when you watch James Wan. James Wan is particularly talented at jump scare. I say he's kind of there as well. Like he's good at doing it. And it's not the only thing he does. Like he does other things that are scary. And while I do not have any faith that he can do a Possession remake properly, I don't know who else you could pick, so fuck it. Might as well give it to him because that's what's happening anyway. So we'll see how he does with Possession of all things. But and then I'll end up that the one non-comedy I watched this month was Saturday Night. I went to theaters to see that. It's Uncut Gems, but not nearly as depressing. So if you want to see how Saturday Night Live was made and see how people act out Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi and Chevy Chase, it's a lot of fun.
I assume the film is 80% cocaine.
Yeah, it really is. Like they have fucking George Carlin on there doing a ton of coke. Yeah, it's good though. It's like a real time. They have 90 minutes before the first episode of Saturday Night Live drops, and it's a real time movie of that 90 minutes.
Oh, sounds good.
I don't know that
it
there's
was really good.
I don't know that there's ever a movie I hated more than this remake of Possession.
I mean, I don't see how anybody can do it. Like, honestly, I like Parker Finn, and I'm like, at least they're giving it to a talented studio hit, like a studio director. But I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't trust fucking James Wan or Mike Flanagan with it. Like, I mean, and I think there's some of the more talented ones in the industry right now. Like, I don't know how you do it. Like, I don't know if it's possible.
Why? And the bigger question is why? Like,
Because they got popular in the last few years and studios have noticed. Like it's gained more popularity.
If the only person I would even, I'm not even gonna watch this movie. I just hate it on principle. The only
I mean, I'll
person I
watch
would,
it.
thank you. Yeah, let me know. If Cronenberg did it, I would be into it. I would watch it.
Maybe
Maybe even Baby
Cronenberg in
Cronenberg.
like the '80s, but like, I don't know. Like I like some newer Cronenberg, all right, but I wouldn't trust him now. I trust his son more than I trust him.
Yeah, maybe Baby Cronenberg. That's fine. Maybe Gaspar Noé trying it. That'd be interesting.
Chris just wants everyone to hate it. He gets no A to fucking direct it. Like everyone's just gonna hate it.
Yeah, exactly.
They should let Nicholas Sparks have a try.
Yeah, I agree. I
Right.
would watch the shit out of that actually. Actually, if you're gonna go weird with it, go that kind of weird with it, where it's not
Actually,
weird.
Nicholas Sparks is the writer. Sorry, I meant John Cassavetes' son, Nick Cassavetes.
Yeah, get Sparks to write the screenplay, and then get Cassavetes to direct it.
That
I
sounds
love
great.
Nick Cassavetes, by the way.
Do what?
I love Nick Cassavetes.
I mean, I do too. I think John Q is great. I really actually like what's weird with like God is a Bullet, which was his last one. I gave that movie like a 6 out of 10, but I have not forgotten that movie since I watched it, and I've actually been tempted to go rewatch it again because I was like, obviously something stuck with me, as bad as I thought the writing was.
And on the topic of the Possession remake, um, I was talking about this yesterday, I think. But if I was going to give it to anyone, given what I saw in The Substance, which just came out like a couple of weeks ago, I would cautiously watch a Coraline Foggy or Fargo, or it's a French name, so I don't know how
Yeah, the
to
T is
pronounce it,
probably
but
silent for some reason.
yeah. But yeah, her.
Yeah,
She
that's a
she
good
did
shout out.
really really well with the body gore aspect. Obviously, being a female director, she's probably more empathetic to that side of it, where like Andrei Vorwasky, like because that story is so personal to him, he can be like empathetic to both sides. But I think it'd be
Right.
difficult for a man who's separated from that personable side of that story to step in and do both sides justice without making either one feel over the top. So yeah, I think I'd trust her.
That's a great call out. Um, before I go, Krit, do you want to say what you've been watching?
Oh, okay. So how do you do this month, week? Because right, I'm not actually gonna do what I've seen this month because I've seen 43 movies this month so
Yeah, just
far.
give shout outs to your highlights. Like maybe pick
Yeah.
like 4 or 5 that you liked most.
Okay. I'll do mostly the new stuff. So I watched It's What's Inside, which is a great new sci-fi horror movie. Zach actually was the one that mentioned it to me first, and it's a wonderful little movie. It's about this group of friends who are having a party, and one of the members of this group are gonna get married. So they invite like a couple people for a premarital party, and they bring one guy who they haven't really spoke to in a while, and he brings this suitcase, and in the suitcase there's this like retro futuristic like technology in it, and no one really knows what it is. And he hooks it up to everyone, and essentially what it does is it swaps people's minds. So like it will transfer someone else's mind into someone else's body, and obviously they all freak out at first. But the movie goes into this game that they start playing where it's essentially werewolf. They switch bodies and they have to figure out who's in whose body. But obviously because it's a sci-fi horror, things ensue. It's a really, really great movie. It's on Netflix, I believe. And yeah, I think anyone interested in any sort of horror this year should see it. It's just a really good time. What else have I watched? Okay, this isn't a new thing, but I recently rewatched Nosferatu, and I'm doing a video on it. I'm working on a video on Nosferatu, and it's just incredible. It's one of the best movies ever made. Like it's so timeless in a weird way. And me and Zach have had a lot of conversations about it recently. So yeah, great movie. I watched a lot of Hitchcock. I've seen Psycho, Rear Window, Vertigo, The Birds, all masterpieces. Great stuff. Uh, Strange Darling. Um, I watched yesterday.
Dope movie.
Yeah, Strange Darling again, really great movie. Um, Super beautiful, shot on 35mm, very colorful. It's the main DP is what's his name, Zach? I don't know.
Giovanni Ribisi.
Yeah, him. um, who's normally just an actor. People know him from being an actor.
Phoebe's brother in Friends, if you
Yes.
remember that. Yeah.
He's
Oh
also
yeah,
in
in
Yeah.
Ted, Saving Private Ryan. He's in Avatar.
Lost in Translation as well, isn't he?
Yes,
Yeah.
Scarlett
Yeah.
Johansson's husband in that.
Gone in
yeah,
60 Seconds. He's always been a character actor guy.
yeah. And he's the DP for it. And it's his first shot at being a cinematographer, really. And he's absolutely phenomenal at it. It's one of the best shot movies of the year, I think. Um, really beautiful.
Is that the film that has the main actress from the Scream TV series?
I believe
Yes.
so, yeah. And it's
Yeah,
got
yeah, yeah, it
Kyle
is.
Gallner, who is,
Yeah.
Oh
all over
yeah,
my life.
also in
Willa
Scream.
Fitzgerald is who you're thinking of. She's
So,
in the Fallout House of Usher as well.
so two Scream alumni are in it then, because Kyle Gallner was in Scream 5 also.
Yeah, my
Oh yeah, he was. Yeah. Yeah. Um. So yeah. Anyway, fantastic movie. Really good.
Yeah, I've heard good. Is it the one that's kind of like it's like shown out of sync or something? I've
Yeah,
heard a
it
yeah,
little
is.
bit
yeah.
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, I've been meaning to get
Super
around to it.
non-linear. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like told in chapters. So you get like these little vignettes that come up to say what chapter it is. I think you start in chapter 3, or
That
chapter
sounds
6,
right.
one of those. Yeah, but then it jumps back and forth, and each jump fills you in, which allows for more like plot twists that wouldn't necessarily be plot twists if it was just told in linear style. So I think, yeah, it was a super creative like writing endeavor, even just before the filmmaking aspect of it.
Yeah, I think it
And
like the fun thing is it like recontextualizes every chapter. So you like, okay, I know what's going on. Next chapter, I have no fucking clue what's going on. This is what I think's going on now, and you just kind of learn to go with it.
yeah, it's really great. And then I'll just wrap up with something I just saw before we started recording this, which is another sci-fi horror film called Things Will Be Different. It's it's an indie, horror film. It comes from Rustic Films. They haven't done many like high profile things. I think the biggest movie they made was The Endless, which came out in like 2017. But it's directed by Michael Felker. It's his first film, I think, and it's about the siblings who do a robbery, and they go to this remote house, like a farmhouse, and in the closet of this house, if you follow like a certain amount of instructions, it sends them to a different timeline where like there's no people, no nothing. It's just the world exactly how it is, just only them in it, and they're there to like hide out until everything blows over so they can go back home with their money and live their lives. But they kind of get trapped in this extra timeline and get told that someone's going to come and kill them. Like there's someone else in this timeline with them, and they can't go back until this person's dead. But they don't know when they're going to come and all this stuff. It's a really interesting concept, really fun movie. I don't think it's anything spectacular, but I do think it's pretty good for what it is and what its budget is.
Sounds kind of Twilight Zony.
Yeah, no, it is. It I would say it's probably like a feature length Twilight Zone, because
Nice.
its budget isn't massively big either, and it's literally got like a cast of two mains, and then there's some secondary characters that show up for about 2 minutes. Set in one location pretty much the whole time. So yeah, there's not a lot to it, but it's a well written and thought out movie.
Nice. Giovanni Ribisi is awesome. It makes me feel really old that we have to contextualize who he is. Um, he was in a lot of movies when I was first getting into film as like a pretty prominent character actor.
I still love him. Probably the first thing I remember from was the Flight of the Phoenix remake, which I feel like I'm the only person in the world who loves that movie. Probably
Flight
because
of
I've never seen the original. I've never seen it. I've only seen the remake.
the flight of what?
The Flight of the Phoenix.
Flight of the Phoenix.
Going with the thing, the plane crashes in the desert. They're to try and get the plane going again. Dennis
Yeah, they're trying
Quaid
to
was in the
rebuild the
remake.
plane. And Tyrese Gibson, of course, and Hugh Laurie. There was actually a big cast in that.
Nice.
I mean, the two main things I know Giovanni Ribisi from is from The Gift, and he's absolutely phenomenal in The Gift, the Sam Raimi film, and he's in Sneaky Pete, which was a Prime, an Amazon Prime show, and I really loved Sneaky Pete, and it ended up getting cancelled after like 2 or 3 seasons, but it was a super good show.
Yeah, I picked Friends because I was like, okay, Adam, and Chris will definitely know Friends probably.
Yeah,
So I was like,
100%. I knew
that's the
exactly
one
what
I'm
you're
going
talking.
to pick.
Yeah, like I said, because when you said the name, I was like, I definitely know that name. And then as soon as you said Phoebe's brother, I was like, yeah, I know him. I know that dude.
Um, he's an actor in Avatar.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's
he's
like
like the guy who owns the main thing. Yeah,
he's the one that explains unobtainium.
Oh, he's like the money guy, like the evil money guy.
Yeah.
Got it. There's a franchise that people need to talk about more. What an underrated gem.
Just not on this
Um,
podcast right now, please.
all right, so I'll go quickly because most of the movies I will name by name only, and not really say too much about it, other than I'm watching a lot of these movies for a very specific reason, which I'll be recording in about 3 hours from now. Well, a little bit more than that, but I'll be recording today. So as much as I did enjoy these movies, it was kind of intense to watch them all back to back. So, Horrors of Malformed Men is probably the most well-known, or one of the most well-known Taro Ishii movies. Great film, but there's he made like a bunch of movies in the year 1969. So most of the ones I'm going to be mentioning are from the year
Nice.
1969.
yeah. I was thinking of doing it.
Yakuza Law, which you would think just sounds like a Yakuza movie, but imagine if Takashi Miike had a uncle who was violent,
I assume he does.
but
Yeah,
like,
that sounds really reasonable.
yeah, but like more violent than Takashi Miike. Um, so Inferno of Torture, Tokugawa Sex Ban, Orgies of Ito, Shogun's Joy of Torture, and then the Tokugawa genealogy. They're all like, well, most of them, anyways, are period pieces set in a particular era of Japan that's very similar to the Roman Empire in terms of decadence, in terms of like wealth for the country, and in terms of having rulers that are viewed in retrospect as being kind of perverted and maybe a little bit severe, and being nice. It's but like these are movies that are kind of in the same way we have a fascination with Rome. The Tokugawa era in Japan was like 230 years, and it was a time of prosperity for the Japanese. So there's a lot of curiosity, cultural curiosity. These movies were all very successful financially for Toei Studios, and they are kind of hard to watch, although they're very good and very creative and ironically very beautiful, very beautifully shot. And yeah, there'll be a bunch of in-depth discussion about that coming out in the next few weeks. But there's all these Taro Ishii torture films. Then I saw The Howling, the original Howling again. And it's just funny because, did any of y'all see The Howling 2 and it recently because Vinegar Syndrome just put it out?
I mean, I haven't seen it recently. I've seen it at some point in my life.
The difference between Howling and Howling 2 is just it was just making me laugh. Like as I was watching it, it's just they're not even in the same universe. It's like
They
I
made
don't
like 5 of those things, didn't they? They made like 5 of those, I think.
Yeah, I think it's like seven. I got them. I found them all on. A lot of them are on German Media Book.
Of course they are.
Yeah. So I'll be slowly going through the rest of the Howling series because I'm fascinated with where they take this. Like the Joe Dante made the first Howling, the guy from Gremlins. I know he did other things, but
Small soldiers, more importantly.
yeah, I was gonna say Gremlins more
Absolutely.
importantly, but it's like a good movie. Like it's a good. There's a reason it's popular. It's a good studio Hollywood film. They have some fun with the werewolf lore. It's a good movie. And then Howling 2, they just go in a direction that I really liked. Most people probably wouldn't. Um, I like Howling, but yeah, saw those. Saw some Radiance movies, A Man on His Knees, which I liked a lot. Some Vinegar Syndrome movies, like this Cruel Britannia set with Craze, Penny Gold, which are both kind of detective stories, and then Crucible of Terror, which is one of these kind of fun horror films where there's an artist and he tries to capture the soul of his um, subjects and turn them into his victims. Um, there's an early Seijun Suzuki movie, Tattooed Life. Adam and I saw the original, uh, well, not original, but very original horror movie in American Werewolf in London, which is still fun. We Still Kill the Old Way, which I think is better than Godfather, or at least up there, at least comparable. It's, I know it's sounds like I'm trying to be like a hot take. It is just an incredible mafia movie, and I hope it gets rediscovered in a huge way. And then some movies we're going to be talking about today.
Nice.
I forgot we were doing other things
Yeah, I
besides the
forgot
daily
we were talking
business.
about. I I thought we were all just having a nice chat. Yeah, I suppose we better start talking about the movies we're going to talk about today. Obviously, this is part two of our Evil Dead special. Obviously, last episode we covered the original Sam Raimi trilogy. If you've stumbled onto this episode and are very lost, then maybe go back and listen to that one first. We're going to be talking about the two films that were kind of like reboots or I suppose remake slash reboots. Of a kind of a new continuity. I should put it out there to say we haven't and we're not covering the TV series Ash versus the Evil Dead for this because I just was not committing to watching multiple seasons of a TV show for a podcast episode. But just out of curiosity, have any of you guys? Well, I assume you have, Zach. Have anyone been Has anyone seen Ash versus the Evil Dead, the TV series?
I've seen a bit of it. I haven't got around to finishing it. I'm really bad with TV shows. I never finish any of them.
Yeah, I'm the same.
So, but I will get around to finishing it one day. But I did see the first season, and then I think I started the second season. It's really good though.
Yeah, like we were talking about. I was going to bring it up. We were talking about Army of Army of Darkness, where Ash is more of a character. I think the show actually does a pretty good job of breaking down that Ash isn't nearly as cool as he thinks he is. And I think they do that really well. So I think it does have a bit of purpose. I think it was, yeah, it was canceled by the end. They did. I think it was supposed to have a fourth season and it never got one, which is, it got the Chucky, the Child's Play series got to follow the same thing. Got three seasons and canceled.
That's just how a lot of shows go these days, isn't it? Three
Yeah.
seasons cancelled. So, anyway, okay. So yeah, we're not going to be covering that one anyway. So we're going to be just looking at just the two films that have come out. So we're going to start off in 2013 with Fede Alvarez, with his film, which is just called Evil Dead. So no, the Evil Dead, just Evil Dead. And the fucking long description from Letterboxd is the following. Mia, a drug addict, is determined to kick the habit. To that end, she asks her brother David, his girlfriend Natalie, and their friends Olivia and Eric to accompany her to their family's remote forest cabin to help her through withdrawal. Eric finds a mysterious Book of the Dead at the cabin and reads aloud from it, awakening the ancient demon. All hell breaks loose when the malevolent entity possesses Mia. I don't like that they left out the dog. There was a dog there too. I'm pretty sure the dog's
Poor
name was
dog.
like Sunday or something weird. Or maybe I'm mixing it up with another film I've watched recently.
No,
Um,
no, there is a dog.
no, it's definitely a dog. I just can't remember what the
It
dog's
is like
name
an
is.
old person name though. Like while you're doing that, I'm going to look it up.
Oh, please do. So yeah, Chris, do you have any stats for us regarding Evil Dead before we give our thoughts on it?
Yeah.
It's Grandpa. His name is
Yeah, I've
Grandpa.
just seen that
Oh,
grandpa.
Grandpa.
I was right. It was an old person name.
What film did I watch where there was a dog called Sunday? I need to go look. Now I need to figure that out in the meantime.
Someone's screaming it. Okay, so this is a pretty beloved movie. Very quickly, it's jumped up in the They Shoot Zombie list, into the top 500.
Needs to be a bit
Uh,
higher, but I can get
Yeah,
down with it.
it's too low.
it's a 451 right now, and I'm assuming it's just gonna kind of keep climbing. I don't in the spreadsheet that I keep for They Shoot Zombies, I don't have the previous years like I do for They Shoot Pictures. But I mean, that's a pretty fast ascension. The movie that's right below it is 1931 Dracula, and the movie that's right above it is the original Jurassic Park. So
Good
it's,
company.
yeah, good company.
Wait. Look, Jurassic 93 Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
No, okay. So this is a list of. I think it's important to clarify. And Krit, I don't know how much maybe you already know what I'm doing, but so there's two lists that we kind of talk about. One is They Shoot Pictures, which is overall kind of best, films as measured by a bunch of different critics, and Adam and Zach mostly disagree with. Um, and then this is They Shoot Zombies, which is a subsection of just horror critics and people ranking like horror movies. And
Okay.
so Jurassic Park is listed as the 450th best horror movie.
And that
Not
comes down to probably like if for people who do put it as a horror film, probably seems really low. But there's probably plenty of critics who do not count that as a horror film because it's kind of
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
that weird in between. So
I was
some
gonna say
critics
I don't
count
think
some
I
won't.
would.
Yeah, it's a monster movie, so it's kind of like Godzilla. It gets thrown into the same thing as like some people just put monster movies as a subgenre of horror.
where would you put it if not a horror movie, like an adventure movie?
It's just a sci-fi adventure, yeah.
Sci-fi action adventure, I guess. Yeah.
Fair enough. They Shoot Pictures is not quite as kind to this movie.
Yeah, that's
It's
why they can go fuck themselves.
it has broken the top 10,000. It's 9,000.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's right in between Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story,
That's a good movie.
and The Perks of Being a Wallflower.
That is not a good
Oh,
movie.
That's not a good movie.
what?
But look, I think again, Crit, to remember 10,000, like there's been a lot of fucking movies made.
It's still wrong.
And this is
Exactly.
and this is still pretty like relatively new. This film's like just over 10 years old. There's not a lot of time for a lot of critics to put it in their top 10 movies of all time. So I think any film being in the top 10,000 is respectable, especially for like a film made in the last 20 years.
Yeah, yeah, man, and a lot of people are not going to put this in the top 10, let's be honest. But I think that's going to be a debate that we're having soon in just a minute. But yeah, this movie made a ton of money. I think that's worth calling out because it's this is an interesting thing where like the Evil Dead is kind of a good argument for a lot of the thing I hate. We were just talking about possession, but going back to old IP and drugging it up for no reason. But this movie was made for 17 million and made 98 in the box office, and that's
But
not
it
including.
should be noted. I want to note this. Sam Raimi himself personally picked Fede Alvarez to remake this movie.
Yeah.
Raimi is the producer, and so is Bruce Campbell. They are very
Yeah,
much a part of this remake. It wasn't
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
wasn't just them like, well, they're remaking our shit. Oh well, they are like participants very strongly into this.
Bruce
Well, yeah,
Campbell is
in
even in the
And
post-credit scene.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were all. Robert Tappert was still involved. I mean, they were there on the set helping Fede figure this out because this was his first movie. Raimi found him doing short films and really liked his stuff. Thought he would be a perfect fit for it, and we'll get to it in a minute. I think it was a perfect fit for this type of movie.
yeah, I mean, the him and Bruce Campbell between this and the movie we're going to cover next have just made a shit ton of money in the last 10 years. I mean, and good for them. They're good people. I'm happy they did it. The next one blew up in an even bigger way, which is wild. But yeah, this movie was critically loved by horror fans and moderately accepted by general fans. and made a lot of money. So this put Evil Dead back on the map for a new
There's so
generation by
much
coming out
bitterness. I can just feel the bitterness.
with. I'm being objective. Yeah. Who I feel like I should not go first. Who wants to go first in talking about the review on the movie?
I think I'll go first. I think I'll actually give a balanced, nuanced view of this film. Because I think a lot of you guys are probably split one way or the other. Like I think this film is perfectly fine. I give it a 7 out of 10. I don't think it's a bad movie. As much as Zach wants to accuse me of thinking it's a bad movie in our WhatsApp group. Um, I don't think it's bad. Um, what is bad for me is the start. Well, not the start. The very start of the film. With that kind of flashback scene is really good. And then when the whole scene where they're like setting up the film, with the new characters and they arrive at the cabin and blah blah blah. That's what led me to dub this a CW Evil Dead film, because it's so bad. The actors are all terrible at playing normal human beings. They're good once the film start, like once the action kicks in, they're good at what they do. They're so terrible at playing actual human beings, and the dialogue for the real human beings is so awful. It is like taken from like a fucking CW show, like a Pretty Little Liars or Riverdale or something. The script for when they're trying to be normal humans is really bad. And I was thinking, oh no, because I remembered really liking this. I saw it. I don't know if it was exactly when it just came out or shortly after. It's been a long time since I'd seen it, but I remembered having really fond memories of it, and I remember really liking it. So when that opening sort of part was happening, I was like, oh no, this is going to be bad. But then once the film does start, I think it's really good. It's a really good horror film. Um, and what I like about this film, especially compared to the next one, and this carries over from what I said about the first Evil Dead movie, is that it's really like grim and gory and does a lot of horrible things. But I feel like it's never mean. And I think that balance is really important to this front, like in Evil Dead films. I think once you cross over into meanness and mean-spirited, aspects of the plot, I get taken out of it a little bit. So like there's horrible, gory things happen, but it's all still kind of fun. It's all well done. It's well shot, it's well put together. Um, so yeah, I struggle with the human aspect of it, but once the film actually kicks into the main plot, I just think it's a fun time. It may not be a masterpiece or anything, but I think it's a good time. It's an enjoyable watch. So now one of the
Okay.
Rabbit fans can go, I guess.
I guess I will go. I actually have the first time I saw this movie. I was one of those people that got to see it in theaters. I went to just a little background. I went to a Methodist college, not for any religious reasons. It was just near me and it's cheap. So, but every Friday night they would actually give us free tickets to the local theater, and they would actually offer a shuttle if we wanted to go. So, what I think is fun is everyone from that college got their Friday night ticket and packed out the theater for Evil Dead. So I got to see that in a completely packed theater full of like 20-year-olds. And those reactions are just fantastic. Like, a lot of these people had never seen anything quite like this. And I think what this movie does so successfully is I think it's, for somebody wanting to get into gore, it's kind of like what you were talking about, Adam. I think it does, I think it's fun. Like, sure the gore effects are fantastically done and it's but the idea of someone taking like what is that like a turkey carver and carving their own arm off is just for some reason it's just ridiculous enough to kind of stay fun. And it's going to be stuff that's going to make you kind of squirm a little bit, like when she cut, like I remember the trailers predominantly showed her cutting her like tongue in half. Like that was used a lot in the trailers. And I think stuff like that, yeah, it gives you kind of an ick, but not in a hostile sort of way. Like I think I
Yeah.
guess the best comparison is like that was the era where Saw had just kind of ended for a while, but it was that same sort of thing where you're still having fun with it, even if it's making you squirm a bit. And but I think what the movie does well is, yeah, the characters are a little vapid, but I think as much as we have nostalgia for the first three, they aren't exactly hitting high end characters here, especially the first one. I'd actually say these characters are better than the ones in the first movie, as much as I like that movie. Um, I think they serve a very specific purpose, and that purpose is it's really to the whole. I think the idea of the movie is to set up where you think the her brother is the Ash character. And I think it wants to make the fans of the original that much more comfortable thinking, okay, he's going to be the person. When in reality, it's Mia, who I actually think I like Jane Levy. I've seen her in plenty of things. I think she's a good final girl in horror. She's done it several times. I think she's very talented at it. And the movie ends with it fucking raining blood. So I'm not going to hate on it. This movie's a masterpiece. 5 stars, no notes.
One thing I'll say just on the note of another sort of small criticism I have, and it's only because you reminded me when you said about the turkey carver. And like I don't think all the characters are very well written to the point where I didn't even know that David had a girlfriend until she got the turkey carver in her hand. I was like, who the fuck is this bitch?
Yeah, she's definitely the most forgotten because like Eric, he's kind of the one that pushes the plot forward because he reads from the book.
Yeah.
And of course David is her brother, and then you have Mia, where the other two are a little bit more lost. And for anyone who hasn't noticed yet, their first initials of their names spell out demon, so it makes their names really easy to remember for the most part.
Oh, for fuck's
Like,
sake, I didn't even realize that.
yeah, it all spells out demon. So that's why it's sometimes. But the first three of those letters, I think it's Olivia, is his girlfriend's name,
It
or
is,
it's the
yeah.
other girl's name. Yeah, and then Natalie.
Oh no, Natalie is the girlfriend. Sorry, Natalie is the
Yeah,
girlfriend.
and
Olivia
Olivia
is
is
the one
the
who
doctor
gets.
girl. Yeah,
Yeah.
her face is cut up. Yeah. So yeah, fun fact for anyone who hasn't realized that. So but yeah, if we want Krit to just continue on the train of liking it, or if we want Chris to balance it out, go for it.
I
Yeah,
was gonna say I don't really mind.
I'd be curious to hear why you like it so much as well, Krit.
Okay, so I don't like it as much as Zach, so I will put that out there. But I do think this movie is pretty exceptional. I mean, one on the topic of like remakes, it is very, very difficult to take any film that's a classic that's loved, pretty much universally, and reinvent it in a way that people actually accept it. That's a skill that is very underrated, I think. This film is not just remaking The Evil Dead. It's taking the DNA of it, but it's making something new out of it. And I can completely respect that. I think around this time, just before all the other remakes were happening, the Friday the 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Streets and Halloween and all of that stuff, and largely most of them were just kind of taking the original, updating it a little bit, putting it out. This film does go lengths to change it, to make it a different movie, to make it something that you can watch in a marathon of this series and it still be of equal value to every other film in the series. It's not like if you're watching this, you choose whether you watch The Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2013 because they're just such different movies. One as well, I love the idea of not having a male lead. They realized pretty early on that if they try and redo Ash, people are going to push back against it because it's not Bruce Campbell. So they didn't do a regular male because then he's just going to get compared to Ash, and it's the same problem all over again. So they did the traditional to have a final go, and I think that works exceptionally well. It does set itself apart. I think it does decent homages to the original without feeling like it's pandering. And if you haven't seen the original, this completely stands. Like you don't,
Yeah, that's right.
you don't lose anything. Because sometimes when you watch a later movie in a series or a remake, it feels like it's nodding so much to earlier movies that you're missing out on half of the experience.
Yeah.
But this isn't like that. All the nods to the earlier films make sense, like diegetically. That it doesn't require any previous knowledge, which I think is great. Also,
I'm gonna. I
Yeah,
didn't
jump
like
in.
the Amityville vibrator, and I'm going to assume it's because it had been a long time since I'd seen the original Amityville horror.
Oh, you've lost. I've lost all train of thought
It,
now.
it's just don't worry. It's just this is just a tactic by Chris. Mention porn and you'll lose your train of thought.
Yeah, I've lost where I am now. Actually, that subject kind of helps as well. One of my main gripes with the original The Evil Dead is the tree scene, and
Mm,
everybody knows exactly what scene that is. And I know that the movie's supposed to be shocking and all of this stuff, but it always just felt a bit too much. It felt too mean spirited, too shock value for shock value's sake. I mean, even Sam Raimi has, said that that's the one scene he regrets putting into the film. And it always just felt so visceral and
yeah.
jarring for The Evil Dead. This film has a scene similar, but it does it in a way that doesn't feel nearly as revolting to watch. It just
Mhm.
kind of blends in with the rest of the gore. It's less perverse and just more vicious, if that makes sense. Um, and yeah, I think it's done in just a more tasteful way, whilst also being gorier, which is a weird payoff, but not payoff, trade-off. And then obviously, like Zach said, the finale, it rains blood. That final shot of the raining blood with the cabin on fire and the actual blood from the deadite and all of that stuff. One of the most beautiful compositions I have ever seen, period. I think it's probably the best finale out of the whole series. And I think it's really underrated, like in terms of cinematography and in terms of like color grading on how you actually do that. Like the blend of tones of red, white, and black makes every single element that is red distinct. You can clearly tell what's the blood from the deadite, what's the blood from the sky, what's the fire from the cabin,
Mhm.
and that should honestly not work. It should just be a wash. It should just be a blur of red. Everything's blending, and you can't really tell what's what. But somehow they they've expertly crafted that moment to make everything as legible as possible. And I love the technical proficiency of that. So yeah, I love this movie. I think it's probably the first scary movie in the franchise. Also, um, one that's like still very viscerally scary by modern standards. Which, again, to be fair, it's not that old. It's like 11 years old. But still, yeah, holds up. I think it's a great movie.
So Zach, I'm probably going to surprise you here. I was going to be a little hard on this movie until I saw Evil Dead Rise, and then I realized how bad it can get. And so I I'm going to say that this movie there's the main context of our disagreement is that it's better than the original movies, which I still don't think so. But it this is a great one- like I'll get into my complaints in just a second. But the thing I like about it is it has a spirit of recklessness and like it just kind of goes there. Like it's a very, when it goes for the kills, they're very big and they're creative and like they're gory and it's just this feels like it could be an 80s or 70s horror movie. Like it's a lot of it just feels like a drive-in style kind of over the top movie that some countries would ban. Like it's got that vibe to it, and I really appreciate that. So I like this movie. I think I might even say I like it a lot. In the context of the Evil Dead franchise, it's difficult for me to say I like it better because if this was, I know you're going to laugh at me for saying this, but if this movie had been shot on 16 millimeter and was grainy, I think it would be better. I
But
don't
then
like that it's
I do think you lose a little bit of the effect, right? Like, I mean, one thing they're able to do is kind of brag about their effects.
maybe, but it's just too clean and like polished, and I think it's maybe that goes into some of the acting too. I don't know, but The main complaint I have about it is just that it feels like a studio movie as opposed to it feeling like being independently produced. And I know that's
But
not really.
it is a studio movie.
No, I get it. I get it. I mean, and I know it's not really a fair critique, but it just makes me like it less, I guess.
I can kind of see where Chris is coming from because that was maybe something that took me out of it a little bit as well. In that it's very obvious that we're on a set. That's at some points during this film, as
I
opposed to
will
actually being in a cabin in the woods.
I will hand that slightly because I mean I'm just a person that prefers film over digital anyway. Um and yeah, I do feel like at times the movie is just a bit too glossy. But I feel like most movies past the year 2010 feel like that to me anyway.
Yeah,
Oh
So
same.
yeah, for
that
sure. Yeah.
that's less so a critique of this movie and more so just a critique of movies in general made in a sort of modern era. But I can understand that to an extent. Also, the whole spoilers, but not really spoilers. The whole the twist on the whole final girl thing. I don't want to say too much just in case it is a spoiler, but the idea that you think the narrative's going one way and then it subverts it and goes like back on itself, and I thought it was a nice twist and really clever.
Yeah. And I do, I think, again, especially compared to some of the stuff we're going to talk about in a moment, I do think they captured the spirit of the Evil Dead franchise well, which I appreciated. This does feel like an Evil Dead movie, uh, or at least something within the franchise. So I have to give it props for that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know.
we're all very nice to each other.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happens when you talk about a good movie.
There you
I
go.
was- Yeah, it really helped that I saw Evil Dead Rise. I was going to be a bit more down on this movie than last night. I was just like, what the fuck am I watching?
See, that one you're probably like, we'll wait to it, but I mean, I mentioned you already know that I think the Rise is the worst movie, but you're gonna even I'm gonna have to like defend it from the sound of
I
it.
mean, yeah, I also have Evil Dead Rise as the bottom of the Evil Dead, but I still like it a lot. So
I think
That'll
that
be
probably
fun.
more so speaks to the consistency of the first four films as
That's right.
opposed to the overall quality of the fifth film, I
I
guess.
honestly think Evil Dead is probably the most consistent horror franchise.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
that's a controversial take, to be honest.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's that Scream and maybe Child's Play probably have like remained the most consistent through the years. Like, and I would say Child's Play is still like a step behind Scream and Evil Dead.
Yeah, Charles Place suffers a little bit.
But yeah, but I did want to bring up because we were talking about the polish thing. I do like I think for me, I don't have an issue with polish, mostly because to me, I think it's a sign that there is like more. I think back about like Friday 13th. You still had studios making. You had Paramount making the first eight. They didn't give a shit about those movies. They did it because they knew they were an easy way to make money. They put no effort into them. So yeah, they never looked polished because they didn't give a shit, and they were very much ashamed. I remember they talked to, there's interviews where they talk about what is that Mozart movie? Ar- Starts with an A.
Amadeus?
Amadeus?
Yeah, where they made that and they had a lot of shame because one of their highest grossing films that year was Friday the 13th. And it was one of the things that actually like encouraged them to eventually sell it off to New Line. So to me, I like that studios want to put polish into a horror film. Like there's some movies that don't necessarily need it, but to me, it's like okay, we're treating this as it's a real film. We're treating this as it needs it. We want to give it a budget to do fun things. Like I think I liked it for that reason. We have this idea that horror movies should almost be like this niche thing in the corner when I think audiences are just in general more receptive to it than they were in the 80s where it felt a little bit more culty or a little bit more I guess punk in that sense where it's to me it's more of a sign of the mainstream which has its pros and cons but I tend to like the pros of that more than the cons.
I I mean the fact that some of the kills in this movie are pretty nasty, and the fact that this movie made $100 million essentially in the box office plus whatever streaming revenue. I mean, that shows that the general public has an appetite for this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and I mean, this is, we're in an interesting 2013 is an interesting time for like the horror scene as a whole. So you had Scream and Hostel and stuff in the mid to late 2000s. And then, during that time Paranormal Activity takes over, so you have your kind of like cheaper grungier things there. And then 2013 and really 2012 is when this kind of change in horror to where people are
Hmm.
wanting more art house stuff. They're wanting more higher productions. They want their 70s new Hollywood type of ideas going more into things. You have your Hereditary, you have your It Follows, you have things like that. Where I think Evil Dead is kind of really early in that. Like, this is before It Follows, this is before The Babadook or anything like that. And so it's kind of in an interesting middle ground where it almost feels like the end of that like torture porn era, but it's still well made to the point where you're having and a director come in and he wants to do it seriously. He wants to, you have the support of what you need to make the movie, but you still have this, saying this is a mainstream movie where someone cuts their face open and people cut their tongues up and things like that, and you still being able to sell it.
And like I always have a bit of a skewed view with this because I was always kind of surrounded by Evil Dead growing up because my dad was into the original films, and as I said on the last episode, showed me the original film much, much too young, when it was still unavailable in Ireland through official means. So I always have a bit of a skewed view of this, but like in terms of like the and maybe Chris will be able to speak to this a little bit more as well. Growing up kind of working in video stores and stuff in college, but like Evil Dead feels like it is a big name, but is it a big name? It's obviously a big name in film circles, but I'm just trying to figure out like why general audiences like would they have come just because it's an Evil Dead movie, or is it because of more the gore and they're like, oh well, this is just a scary movie that'll be gory. I'm just trying to figure that out.
It's
Like
tough
where
because
general
you guys
audiences
didn't
sit.
do video nasties, right? Like that wasn't a thing in Ireland. That was just the UK.
No, well, yeah, we were kind of lumped in the same. Like it
Okay.
was very similar here too.
Yeah, I wonder if that skews like because that could also be like a difference in the US versus the UK and Ireland too, like where it was banned for so long.
Well, like obviously from the UK, I also came to this like much later than you guys did. I didn't see this film, the 2013 one, until maybe 2020. Um, so I got to it super, super late, and I didn't grow up around anyone that really loved movies. I mean, my dad watches movies and he has favorite movies, but he's not like a movie fan. And I didn't know anyone that was. I'm still now really in my real life. I don't really know anyone that's super into movies. And I don't hear Evil Dead being talked about ever, even when talking about horror movies. It never comes up. If I ever mention that I saw Army of Darkness, I have to explain that it's Evil Dead 3. And they go, oh, right. Yeah, that one. Like it kind of just feels like something that's not massively in the public conscience. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm wondering about as well. It feels the same to me. Like obviously Evil Dead is big to me because I grew up around it, but like I feel like if you walk up to a random in the street, they probably know that Evil Dead exists, but they might not be able to tell you really what it's about. So again, I suppose the main point I'm trying to make with this is I'm curious how and why it made so much money when it feels like Evil Dead is not actually that big of a franchise with mainstream audiences.
I think
Yeah,
horror was just getting big around that time. I feel like the 2010s was a really big decade for horror.
Yeah.
Um,
But it might just be that simple because there is definitely people I know who will go to the cinema just to see whatever horror film is out. One of my best friends, his girlfriend drags him, his fiance now drags him to any, and he's a scaredy cat. He won't watch anything like that. But she loves horror films, and she'll just drag him to whatever horror film is showing, even if she has no prior context to it. So
Yeah,
maybe it is
I
just something like that.
like because I'm thinking around that time, and I just remember like because obviously in 2013 I would have been 12, and even then I was aware of like The Woman in Black, The Conjuring, Insidious, Cabin in the Woods. Like all of these things were just huge. I knew these movies more than most other movies that I could actually see. So I just think like horror was very big back then, and Evil Dead, since it is like a known name at least, like it all just kind of funneled down that road. I mean, Carrie came out that year as well, the remake of Carrie,
Ugh.
and something tells me that that movie would have made a lot of money as well.
I mean, it was definitely a packed house when I saw the Carrie remake because it was the same time. One thing I will think, I was sitting here thinking about the marketing for Evil Dead from what I can remember. I feel like that was really the first movie where I would see consistent red band trailers. Like, I don't know if that's much of a thing in the UK or Ireland, but essentially we have green trailers, which are for any general audience, and then we have red band trailers, which are if you're in an R-rated movie, you can see these. And they really pushed those for Evil Dead. I remember any R-rated movie you went to, they showed the red band trailer, so you could see the knife go into the tongue and stuff like that. And I wonder if that kind of just like interested people, like, oh, okay, this is actually going to be kind of a
That's a good
hardcore
point.
movie, you know? Um,
Also, to a point that you spoke about earlier as well, the fact that Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell were so involved in it might have also sparked a lot of interest.
yeah, I mean, at that point, when did I guess was Raimi had he stopped directing it? Had Oz the Great and Powerful come out yet?
Yeah, I feel like Oz the
Okay,
Great and Powerful was 2012.
okay, so this is really like when he just turns down the producer role, like he is just now a producer. So
Oh no,
yeah,
it's 2013 as well. Yeah, so it's the same year actually.
wild. He's producing Evil Dead while making Oz the Great and Powerful.
That's bizarre. But like, obviously, by this point, Raimi was a massive name.
Yeah.
Like, not even just in horror, just in general, because he had wrapped up the Spider-Man trilogy by this point. Um, I forgot the Drag Me to Hell had came
That
out,
was
and
very
that was like,
popular.
yeah, that was really really popular. So I feel like Sam Raimi was just a big name. So Evil Dead itself probably had garnered a bit more interest around that time anyway, just from Raimi gaining so much popularity over the 2000s. So by the time the Evil Dead remake came out, people had probably been refreshed on that franchise at that point.
I bet you that helped opening weekend, but I think the this movie kind of sells itself, right? If you're interesting, like if you're looking for something shocking, um, or looking for something different. I mean, I'm just trying to place myself without the nostalgia of the first three films, just going to like hearing about this movie. I think I'd still want to see it. Like it's an interesting concept, right? It's got like it's a very memorable movie, and you talk about like some of the death scenes, you know. Um, I don't know. I think they did a good job of making a movie that fits within the Evil Dead franchise, but is kind of like its own thing as well, and maybe more modernized, which would mean that, you know, it has more polish and stuff, which goes against why I personally don't like it, but I could see why it does make it helps it be popular.
Also, to be fair, I'm looking at the box office run of this movie,
Hmm.
and it had a very strong, opening weekend, but it had really good legs. So I
Yep.
think just the quality of the movie
Yep.
spread. Like every weekend that followed, like say the fourth weekend after it opened, it had a 54% like increase. Like it was
And
still,
It's awesome.
yeah, it was
yeah,
still making loads of money like throughout its entire run.
and I think it's a movie that had to appeal to like not just teenagers. I think that's a big like the reason we get so many like teenage horror movies that are PG-13 is because there's going to be a lot more theaters that are a lot more hesitant to let a 15-year-old go see this movie by themselves. They can do it, but you know, I've worked in a theater. I remember that being kind of a big thing. If a movie was particularly violent, don't let in younger kids without an ID or a parent with them. And I think for this one, it does have that teenage appeal to it, but I think it does appeal to older audiences as well. At least, your 20s and 30s, which I think helps it a lot. Because a lot of times horror will dip down very quickly, or it doesn't get the full box office because something else will get a bump. Like there's a famous thing where Wild Robot got a bump in its box office the week Terrifier 3 came out, which seems to suggest kids would buy a ticket for Wild Robot and sneak into
Yeah, that
Terrifier
was
3.
reported that was happening
Yeah.
quite a lot.
That is
Yeah.
hilarious. Imagine
Yeah.
your
So
film becoming a success because kids were buying tickets to a different film.
I will say I did go and see Wild Robot like 2 days ago. It's also a pretty good movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's cute. It's a very cute movie. But yeah, so it's an interesting thing because horror does get things, but we're out of that era now, which we might be kind of going back into it, where super ultra violence wasn't the hot ticket. Really, after Saw 5, it like plateaued. It like really hit downwards. And now we were seeing it again, but there's always this ebb and flow with how audiences will react to this ultra violence sort of thing in mainstream films.
I mean, it's true. It is kind of the last of its kind of that era anyway, because James Wan had done Insidious and The Conjuring. I mean, The Conjuring literally came out this year, in 2013. So that completely changed the mainstream horror landscape. Everything was trying to replicate The Conjuring from then on in terms of like mainstream success. So like Evil Dead was kind of just the last leg of this body gore era that horror was running on for a while.
I don't really have much else to add except for Justice for Grandpa. For anyone who doesn't want to look up at all the dog dies, just Justice for Grandpa.
Oh God,
Justice for Grandpa.
Justice for Grandpa.
All right, should we get to this other one?
I want Chris to go first if we do that. Let's let Chris go first.
Okay, well let me get the
Yeah.
info across first. So 2023, so this time last year, Lee Cronin directs Evil Dead Rise, which to read you the description from Letterboxd. A reunion between two estranged sisters get cut short by the rise of flesh-possessing demons, thrusting them into a primal battle for survival as they face the most nightmarish version of family imaginable. So yeah, Chris, why don't you kick us off here on Evil Dead Rise?
Sure. There's not going to be anything on They Shoot Zombies or They Shoot Pictures. And not because it's a new movie, just because it's not a good movie. But realistically, because it's a brand new movie, so it just won't show up on the list yet. Um, it did make a shit ton of money. The budget was estimated to be just under $20 million, and it made 150, just under 150 worldwide. So good return for Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. Um, it was a popular movie, and I can kind of understand why it's a popular movie, and it's kind of the reason that I hate a lot of popular movies. Um, I think this movie is completely abandoned. The way that I was thinking about this is like the director had never seen an Evil Dead movie, but somebody was whispering their take on what it was, and then he made this without ever worrying about the source material. And I get that sequels sometimes take the concept and like go in a new direction. And I've often even celebrated that. So I'm conflicted in being negative on Evil Dead for doing that because I do know that's a bit hypocritical. Um, but I just don't think this movie understands what an Evil Dead movie is on any level. Like I think it feels more like a James Wan movie, or it feels more like something else. Like it like The Purge or something. Like it
May
just
May I ask, what what makes an Evil Dead movie to you?
yeah. Okay, sure. So I'm going back and forth on if it has to be set in a cabin. I guess I don't care that it was in an apartment complex as opposed to a cabin. That didn't really bug me. I was still with it there. Um, the way that the possession happens to me didn't feel, and what, well, more importantly, not the way it happened. The way that the characters acted when they were possessed to me felt like a different movie. It didn't feel like an Evil Dead movie. There's a little bit of like the sound, like the audio effects are different here. The visual effects are different. It just became like a generic kind of possession movie to me, and or started to slide into a generic possession movie, not into an Evil Dead movie, where I think the makeup is usually a little bit more overdone, and a little bit more, yeah, like not fun, but like just a little bit lighter, maybe like this felt to me like it was trying to be a scary possession movie, which is its own thing. And if I saw it as a scary possession movie, maybe I would like it more. But as an Evil Dead movie, I don't understand how this is in the same universe, or why they would try to force it in here, or why they would make this movie. I don't think it furthers the lore at all. Um, I don't think it does anything interesting for the franchise. I don't like the special effects in this as much. I don't like the fact that they brought kids into it. This is the same. Although I liked Alien Romulus, I don't understand why they brought teenagers into the Alien franchise. Like I don't know why there's this need to bring kids into a horror franchise. Like why it's Alien, like Evil Dead is not a franchise with kids in it. Like I don't know, it was weird. Um, uh, like any horror movie, well, like good, like a lot of horror movies, there are some cool scenes in here. Like the meat grinder scene was cool. There were some good deaths in here for sure. I didn't like the color of the blood they chose. I mean, it sounds really nitpicky, but just the whole time I was just grumpy and like not having a good time.
Can I note I have now realized why Chris was shitting on Halloween 4?
Why?
Because a kid is in peril the entire time. And it's the same thing with 5. It's the same thing.
Maybe so. Yeah, maybe so. I think I mean, I'll stop there. I think it missed the mark as being an Evil Dead movie. As being a horror movie, this is kind of the kind of horror movie that I feel like I don't want to watch, or not, well, that I'm not super interested in, which is this kind of modern horror. In my head, this is how modern horror is, whether or not that's true. And this is like furthering the reasons why I don't really give it a lot of chances.
So I guess I'll go real quick. For anyone who wants to hear a very, very quick version of this, I'm gonna plug myself, and I did a 2-minute review of this. So feel free to go watch that if you don't want to listen to this. Um, it's kind of funny because I feel like I have the opposite feelings of you, even though I'm not the strongest on this movie, Chris. It's kind of funny to hear you say it doesn't feel like an Evil Dead movie, because one of my biggest criticism is I think it feels like an overly safe Evil Dead movie. Like it knows what it needs to do. It almost feels like a checklist at times to what an Evil Dead movie is, and doesn't really take it any further than it needs to be. And that was kind of my biggest criticism coming out of the movie, was it felt like too safe for me. Having said that, I actually think the kids is a good angle, just because I don't think anybody should be um, safe from a horror film. Kill them all is what I say. I'm honestly happy when they kill a kid in a movie. Feels like it's got some balls. And I think Evil Dead that's what it's kind of doing for. And if you're going to a high rise apartment, obviously you're not just having teenagers go into a cabin. So, and that really this is where my feelings get kind of back and forth, is I don't think they utilized the high rise apartment very well.
Yeah,
It could have been in a cabin in the woods, and the movie doesn't change all that much
yeah.
until near the end of the movie, where they're more in like the sub basement area. That kind
Yeah.
of thing kind of bothers me a little bit, because I think it just loses its potential. But I have a good time with it. I mean, I had a good time both times I saw this in theaters. I think I see these things in crowds, and I think crowds do help movies like this, because you get these like visceral initial reactions to like the gore and stuff like that. It's probably less mean spirited, like as far as the gore goes, which I don't think Evil Dead is mean spirited, as it could be. But I definitely think it toes that line more than this one does, which I think focuses on more of a fun element, even if I don't think it's as well done.
I think what you said about it being safe is kind of what I meant when I said it's as if like Lee Cronin had never seen a movie and somebody was whispering what it was. I think that's kind of what I was going for. It's like, oh, that you have to mention like Dead by Dawn, or you have to mention like there's like little things thrown in that feel forced and awkward, as if it's like trying to be an Evil Dead movie, but even though it's not. I don't know.
I
Like
think that for me, the difference would be like I think the weight of the franchise was felt more on his shoulders than Fede Alvarez, who's just like, I don't give a fuck. I'm making it the way I want to. It feels just a little bit more that way from how the movies come off. Like I feel like, and I don't blame any director for feeling that way. This is a huge franchise, and it feels on your shoulders because you feel like you don't want to fuck it up. Who wants to be known as the guy who made the one bad Evil Dead movie? Like
no,
nobody wants to
yeah,
be that.
right, right, right. That's a good point.
Anyone would like to pitch in?
I can jump in next. So I think this film's like pretty just mid. I don't hate it, but I don't overly like it either. I'll give the positives first, I guess. I think the cast are all pretty strong. I think Alyssa Sutherland, who plays the mother, is particularly good when she's playing the kind of possessed version of herself. I think that's pretty strong. I think the direction overall is pretty good. It's pretty snappy looking. The effects are good. No real issues there. Um, my main gripe, I suppose I have two main gripes. One is that I was tricked into watching Australians being a horror film. That's my main issue. It's that I feel like I've been tricked into watching this film. Um, but my second more realistic issue is that just some of the writing I just think lets it down. Um, I completely agree with what you said, Zach, about like this being set in a high-rise building is not actually really consequential at all. Like it's put forward that this is the unique selling point of this film is that we're in a high-rise building in an urban setting. We're not in the cabin, they can be anywhere. That's the unique selling point of this film. Ultimately, for them to just trap them on the floor of the building and make them leave to the point where it's like, well, they might as well be in a cabin. It actually it's not really all that unique at all. It's still this exact same situation. They're trapped in a location that they cannot leave, and they have no cell service, and they have no way of contacting anyone, even on the other floors, as we see at the end of the film. So, it feels like they've put a lot of effort into tricking. I don't, maybe tricking is a strong word, but tricking the audience into thinking that this is a unique, version of the Evil Dead. When if you take it at face, if you sort of just take it at face value in terms of what actually happens in the film, it's not actually all that different from any other Evil Dead film. Um, so that's the main gripe I have with this film. Is that it exactly what Zach said. It doesn't actually do anything all that different, despite it maybe giving the impression that it is. And then to kind of agree with what Chris is saying, but I'm not a fan of the kids stuff. Um, I think that brings it into mean territory. So like what I was saying before, where with all the previous Evil Dead films, they've always been gory and they've always been, you know, there's always been a lot of bad shit happening. It never felt in a mean spirit. Whereas I think when you get kids involved, for me, that's what brings it into mean spirited territory. So, and maybe it's because I'm a dad now versus when I first saw this, and maybe just things are just different now. Maybe my brain is just rewired, and it's kind of funny that the two people in the room who have a child don't like that, and the guy who doesn't have a child is like kill all the kids.
Fuck them
So
kids.
maybe it is maybe it just is that way. Just our brains are recalibrated or rewired now.
Maybe.
So I don't like that. I don't like the involvement of the kids in the film. I think it's pretty mean spirited. Um, and then I just don't think the film is all that, interesting from a plot point of view because, like I said, they try and sell us on this unique thing of being in an urban setting, and it just ends up just being a very one note, um, you know, just trapped with demons horror
I
film.
almost wonder if they were afraid it would feel too video gamey. But like when I heard the high rise apartment thing, I was thinking like Raid. Floor to floor, some weird shit's gonna
Yeah, yeah,
happen.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. You know, it would have been like, yeah, it would have been cool to see them actually do something more with that setting. Like, even if it meant just exploring other floors and stuff. Um, I think it would have gone a long way. But with this one, it's just like you said, Zach, they might as well just be in a fucking cabin. If you can't leave the location and you can't contact the outside world, you might as well be in a cabin. It wouldn't actually have changed anything about the movie if they were in a cabin. So yeah, that's my main issue. I don't think it's a horrible film or anything. I just think it's very mid, and I don't see myself ever watching it. I've seen it twice now. I don't see the need to probably ever watch it again.
All right, take a time, Krit. Where are you feeling?
Okay, so I like this movie more than anyone else here, then I guess. Um, but I really like the Evil Dead franchise, and I really like this movie. I think saying it's not doing too much or it's a bit too safe, I think is underselling it a little bit. One, I do agree that the high rise setting, though I think is conceptually cool, isn't utilized nearly enough. I can absolutely get on board with that. But one, straight from the opening, um, I guess actually I'll do it this way. The visual style of this movie is very very specific to this movie. Lee Cronin does have a very distinct style. There's a lot of split diopter shots, which Zach knows I love. I love a split diopter, and there's about 50 of them in this movie. Um, and I think because Sam Raimi is such a visualist, you know, like when you watch a Sam Raimi movie, you know you're watching one even if you weren't told. Um, so I think when Fede Alvarez came in to do Evil Dead, I don't think Fede Alvarez has much of a style. I think he's a very solid director, but in terms of like a distinct style, I don't think he really has one, which made him a good fit for the 2013 remake because it's nothing too jarring to jump from the Sam Raimi movies to that movie. But I also think that kind of vacant space left space for this because I think it's bold to come in on an Evil Dead movie and do something very visually you know, very personality driven in in the same series where there's Sam Raimi movies, three of them that are still very visually unique. But he doesn't kind of trample on the toes. In the intro, he has that drone shot. That's just a straight up homage to Sam Raimi's style and play with the camera. And that whole intro sequence, I think, is absolutely brilliant. It's one of the best intro sequences to a horror movie this side of the decade. The whole cabin thing, the ripping off of the scalp, the drone in the face, and then when she rises out of the water, the title drop is absolutely gorgeous. It's one of my favorite title drops I've ever seen.
Yeah, that part is great. The whole opening sequence is solid.
I love that opening sequence, and I also love that the film is it starts in medias res, but like by the time you get really into the movie, you forget that you neglect that whole intro is kind of connected to this somehow, which I think when it comes back around in by the end of the film, it brings it full circle in a way that like I didn't expect, and every time I rewatch, I kind of forget that's how it loops back around and I really enjoy that aspect. Second, third, fourth of all, whatever I'm on. Um, I love the idea of making a Deadeye kind of the main character. Alyssa Sutherland, one of the most beautiful women ever made. Um, she absolutely crushes it as this Deadeye. And I will say, even though the Deadites in this film operate a little bit more differently than we've seen them before, I don't think really any film has a consistency on how Deadites work. They change pretty consistently from film to film. So I don't really have too much of a problem with this one being like a weird interpretation of what a Deadite is. Um and I think yeah, she absolutely crushes it. I think every scene with her talking to the kids is fantastic. Like the first scene when she's in the kitchen, um, amazing. all the stuff that's done through the fisheye lens of the peephole of the door, I love that the camera is so stuck in one position and you can only see this one frame, and things are happening off screen, but you as an audience can't see. You feel just as trapped as the kids looking through the peephole. And I think it was a great shot to repeatedly use. It was a nice motif. I think the kids stuff is 50-50 with me. I don't care too much about kids being in horror films. I don't feel one way or another about it. But I do like the idea that one of the children is the final girl. There's two final girls in the movie, but the youngest one, I feel like her name is Cassie, but I could be wrong. The youngest girl is one of the main final girls of the movie, which I thought was pretty sick, since you don't really get final girls that are, infants, children.
Jamie Lloyd.
Jamie Lloyd?
From Halloween 4.
Halloween
sorry.
4, man.
I haven't seen Halloween 4, so.
What the fuck?
Wait, I didn't realize that.
Get
You've
off
never
my-
seen Halloween 4?
Get out of my podcast.
But that does explain why Resurrection is 6.
Yeah,
This
it's
really
true.
does explain it.
Literally, I have only seen 6 Halloween films. So, but yeah, on this, what else was I gonna say? There was some other things that I meant to say, but again, I think it's an underrated movie. I feel like people are a bit too harsh on it. Although I would say that overall people do actually consider it an okay movie. Yeah, I don't think it's the best thing in the world. It is still my least favorite Evil Dead movie, but I think it has a lot of good personality traits that none of the other films have, that give me enough reason to watch this.
I will say, like, I was going on Letterboxd to try to understand if there's anybody that liked this, and it's been getting some love. And one of the common things that people like it is that it has good trans representation. And so
Yeah.
if you're going to be a single issue voter, like, yeah, fine. Like, that is cool that it's in here. Like, I can see that. If it's like,
There's
hey,
there's a trans storyline in this?
no,
Yeah.
not storyline. The boy,
Well, character, yeah.
the actor who plays the boy in the
Morgan
film
Davis.
is a
Okay.
trans man.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
But I feel like that's kind of the point. I think it's
Yeah, they're
that's
just
why
treated as
people
a
like
character.
it.
It's
Yeah,
not
it's
yeah.
not. Yeah, it's not a staple of their character. It's just a fact of them.
Yeah, it's not
Which
even
I-
Yeah,
mentioned.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's cool.
Yeah, so I think people do quite like that. That is a fair point in its corner, although I guess that's not massively a product of the film itself.
No.
Like, I think they just had a role and cast someone. Like, because on paper, this is not a trans character.
Right.
It's not like I Saw the TV Glow, where like there's an intention behind it. Like, I feel like it's just a character. They found a good actor for it and then cast them, and they just so happen to be trans, which in itself is something to be praised.
Yeah.
But that's more so to the production of the film rather than the film itself.
Yeah.
One other thing that I forgot to mention that I liked, despite the fact that I was criticizing the writing earlier, that one line where it's like "Mommy's with the maggots now." That's a dope
Amazing.
line.
Oh yeah,
They sold
actually
the
that
shit out
brings
of
up
that
a
in the
point.
trailers.
Yeah, the trailer for this movie was really good. I really like the trailer for this movie, and yeah, that line, I remember seeing it in the trailer, and I can't remember what I was watching, but I was with my girlfriend in the cinema when that trailer came on, and I remember turning to her going, "I'm seeing that."
One thing I will say, seeing Evil Dead and Evil Dead Rise trailers repeatedly at theater watches, I do appreciate how honest they are. Like, look, you want to see some blood, come see it. They're not trying to hide that fact that these are like violent and gory. It's like, nah, you want it, here it is. It's not like the thing with musicals now where it's like, we're not going to tell anybody it's a musical. They'll just figure it out when they get here.
Oh, God, I hate that.
That's my favorite thing of the Evil Dead franchise in general, and I think both 2013 and 2023 both do it well, which is that when it gets bloody, it's like buckets of blood.
Yeah, the final acts of Evil Dead Rise with the whole the tree
Woodchipper?
chopper thing. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
one. That whole thing is insane. I mean,
Right.
even if you just go to the letterbox of this film, the wallpaper or whatever, that goes behind all of it is just of Lily Sullivan's character Beth, just absolutely covered in blood,
Yeah,
holding a chainsaw, which I think is kind of the essence of Evil Dead.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I
No,
will give this movie one more pro. There's an actor named Jane Daniels in the movie, so that's a pro for me.
Why?
Because because Jaden, because
Oh,
well,
Jaden
yeah,
Daniels.
yeah, Jaden Daniels. So yeah, it's a
Sorry.
pro for me now. I will add that as a pro.
Fuck's sake.
is that a Scream thing?
No, it's
No,
he's the quarterback for the Washington Commanders.
Oh, oh,
yeah, I was looking through the cast. I was like, holy shit, Jaden Daniels is in this movie.
Imagine.
Oh,
Um,
another thing, actually, just real quick. I look because in Evil Dead 2013, they don't really have like the tapes or anything of the pastors or the scientists, depending on whichever movie, um, researching the Deadites. I really like the idea that this kid finds the records and he wants to be a DJ of some sort, so he has like a vinyl collection and he it kind of comes through the playing of these records. I just thought it was a nice, like, weird retro but still modern twist on how to introduce the Deadites. And the elevator scene, I think, is also a good parallel to the tree scenes in the earlier films.
yeah.
Yeah, there's times where I really like. Those are the times I really, really like the movie a lot, and I think those are great. Because another thing I did like was the book is different. Like it's almost like they're telling you this isn't the
Yeah.
same Necronomicon. So it's gonna. So when you talk, like I think Chris, you might have mentioned that they act a little bit different. I think that's a good in-universe explanation as of why is because they're not gonna act exactly the same because of the different book.
Well, I did see a theory once that, like, in Army of Darkness, Ash approaches and there's three books, isn't there?
Yeah.
So like there's a theory that like the original Evil Dead run and then Evil Dead 2013 and then Evil Dead Rise are the three books. If that makes sense. So like each book is kind of a different interpretation on the same kind of demons.
It's gonna be really cool until they come up until there's a fourth book and a new Evil Dead movie. It's
Yeah,
gonna be
yeah,
it's a really cool theory till then.
yeah.
No, but not to like nerd out, but that can't work, and that doesn't fit the mythology of Army of Darkness because one of the books is just like a giant vacuum that just like sucks him in, right? And then it's like a like the I don't think that I
I
mean I
mean,
guess
sure, but you
Let the
can't
nerds
really
have their
specify
fun.
you can't really specify why that happens. Like maybe just because it's fictional, so they could just make up any bullshit reason. Like that's not supposed to be Ash's book, therefore he can't touch that one.
okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'm not going to get into a fight with nerds. I lose that every time. Speaking of my attention to detail, I kind of stopped caring by the end. Can we do a quick spoiler thing?
Yeah,
Sure.
sure.
Because I'm
Yeah.
I think we
curious.
all know how these movies end.
Why? Okay, so the you talked about the wraparound crit, and this is what made me think about this. I kind of lost track of the characters a little bit, and I stopped caring. So the very ending, Jessica gets possessed. Was she in? And then I guess she's like going on that road trip, right? So was she in the movie up until then, or was she another
No,
resident?
no, 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 no. She like lives, I
She
think,
just
the
lives in
floor
the building.
below.
It was the
Yeah,
fifth floor or something, yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay, cool. So the building kind of see this is like this could be a crossover to an Amityville movie almost. It's just like, what if we have a lamppost that's possessed? That's all right.
okay. To wrap things up then, do we want to do like just a quick ranking of the films?
Sure.
Sure.
Cool. Mine's super easy because it's just whatever release order. That's my ranking. So
Oh,
mine's really easy.
I'll do
what's
mine.
Evil Dead Rise is your favorite? That's crazy.
No, no. Old to new. Old to new.
So my number one is Evil Dead 2013. Two is Army of Darkness. Three is The Evil Dead. Four is The Evil Dead 2. And then five is Evil Dead Rise.
I'll go that Crit, you could finish us off. Mine is 1, 3, 2, 4, 5.
1, 3, 2. Okay. Sorry, I was trying to visualize that. And yeah, from the bottom to the top, I have Evil Dead Rise, The Evil Dead 2013, Army of Darkness, and Evil Dead 2.
Funny that only one person actually had Evil Dead 2 as their top. It's actually kind of surprising.
Yeah, because that's like the
Yeah, I'm
consensus.
basic.
Yeah, well, I was going to say just the consensus
Yeah.
tends to put that at
It's
the
fine.
top, but
It's fine.
you can
I
call
get it.
yourself basic. That's okay. Cool. Well, look, that was fun. Krit, thank you for joining us. We'll be back in a few weeks with a couple of Zatoichi films. Chris, actually, want to remind the listeners what ones we're watching again? Because I've even forgotten.
Yeah, I do. It's gonna be Zatoichi. So Zatoichi 3, as opposed to the first one, because Zatoichi 3 is the first one in color. Um, and then Zatoichi, we did this, and then I think I had said the wrong one. Is it Zatoichi 8?
I don't know, man. It's your picks.
Yeah, like
I'm not the man to
Yeah.
answer that question.
Well, it's okay. It's Zatoichi 3 and then Zatoichi versus Yojimbo. Okay. Zatoichi 3 is called The New Zatoichi.
Mhm.
And then or New Tale of Zatoichi. And then Zatoichi versus Yojimbo, which I think is like 18.
Yeah, something high up there.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but then the second one is I'm just trying to scroll through and find my
I actually think I added it to my watch list. Let me pull Letterboxd up, and I'll be able to tell
yeah,
you.
sorry, it's hard because there's so many of these. I just didn't have it off the top of my head. I think it's
Zatoichi's Flashing Sword, which is the seventh one.
7. Yeah, 7. That's what, yeah.
3, 7, 18. Okay.
3, 7.
3, 7, and 20 actually. 20 is Zatoichi meets Yojimbo. So
Oh, okay. 3, 7, 20.
20. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah,
So
I'm
we'll be
looking
back in a
forward.
few weeks to do that. There might be an interview or something in the meantime. We also might have a special guest for that episode. I'm going to see if I can figure that out. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the last 2 episodes on Evil Dead. Once again, Krit, thank you for joining us on
Thank you
this
very much.
endeavor. And yeah, we'll catch you once we're out of spooky season and into samurai season. Apparently, it's supposed to be November, but Chris doesn't give a shit about that. So yeah, we'll see you in samurai season, I guess.
Samurai Vember. See ya.
Thank you for listening. To hear more shows from the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network, please select the link in the description.
Hello, my name is Kevin Tudor, and I'm one of the 3 hosts of Almost Major, a film podcast dissecting many major indie studios and the films they release. Every week, myself, Charlie Nash, and Bryden Doyle discuss overlooked, forgotten, or bona fide classic indie films via studio-specific miniseries. We've previously covered numerous films from Artisan Entertainment, Lionsgate Films, and New Line Cinema. Titles including The Blair Witch Project, American Psycho, Dogville, But I'm a Cheerleader, Saw, Requiem for a Dream, and Ringmaster. You know, the Jerry Springer film. Anyways, we have a fun time every week, and we hope you will join us. Subscribe to Almost Major wherever you get your podcasts. Now proudly a part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror. We'll cover all the subgenres, so join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.